What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to another fan thoughts and analysis video for the Overwatch League Season 2 rosters. Today we are looking at the San Francisco Shock, who are the 9th overall team. An interesting team, an interesting spot. A team that I think a lot of people were pretty big on in the last couple stages. They had some big wins. They beat Boston in Stage 4. They beat Philly, I believe, in Stage 3. They beat Houston twice. They beat Seoul. They beat the Gladiators in Stage 3. So they had some good wins late in the season. But they never really lived up to what I think people expected out of them. I think a lot of people thought they would be a stage playoff contender in stages 3 and 4, and they never were. When you have a team like Dallas, who were a 6-win team going into the final stage, they made a stage playoff. They made the stage 4 playoffs. Uh, San Francisco never really had that low of a finish, right? They didn't have 6 wins going into the final stage. I mean, they ended up, right, the season, they ended up as a 17-win team. So it wasn't fantastic, but their map differential was only -7. They were 17 and 23 with only a -7 map differential. That's not that bad. Um, but Seoul, who was the team just ahead of them, had a +13 map differential and was 22 and 18. So being a team that had 5 more losses, um, yeah, that's not too bad. But they never really got to that point where I think people were really, really happy with what they were. And I think that they kind of struggled slightly at times. But that is not what's super important. They're a young team, which is by far their biggest, um, I don't even know how to describe it. Their biggest upside is that they're a young team, and they have a lot of young players and a lot of young talent, and they can definitely become something more. So let's go over this team and this team's players. We're going to start with the DPS role with Baby Bay, who this team has a lot of DPS players. They have 4 players that are entirely DPS. Plus, they have some flex DPS players who are known for their DPS play as well. This is an interesting team. This is a very, very interesting team. Burns with Baby Bay. So Baby Bay is most likely going to be one of the DPS players that we see often. What's weird is his hero pool is a hit scan hero pool, right? McCree, Widowmaker, Soldier 76, likely Ashe. I would assume that kind of overlaps with Architect, another one of their players who played a lot of Widowmaker for this team last season, and he was in the Widowmaker All-Star game in the All-Star weekend. But Architect, I should say, has a more diverse hero pool. He's also known for, Junkrat and the Genji and the Pharah. So he's a bit more diverse in what he plays, while Baby Bay is specifically a hit scan hero. So you'll see Baby Bay, I'm sure, a decent amount, but he probably won't play as much as, say, Architect, who is going to be more in that overall just more diverse hero pool. I think that's going to be a big part of his. I don't even know how to describe it. His usefulness is that he has more kind of diversity in his hero pool. Next, we have Sinatra, who is this team's tracer. He's also got a Genji, a Doomfist. He played Brigitte a lot for this team, and he would play Zarya. So he's probably this team's best DPS player for the most part. He definitely is a very good player. And when you look at his hero pool, he's a very useful player, and he's very nice to have on this team, and he's performed well. He was on the U.S. World Cup team. He's a fantastic player. He's a very good player, and he showed that he's good. He's probably one of the best American players in the world. So he's a very good player, and he played a lot of Brigitte late in the season, of course. Um, because Tracer started to be less relevant as you got to the end of the season, thanks to Brigitte. But one of the things I found interesting about Sinatra is that his playstyle is very, very different for me. Like, when you watch Sabiolbi play, he's got a very, like, cautious kind of style at times. Sinatra's not. Sinatra is just going to do what he wants. And I feel like that kind of hurt him at times, but Sinatra was a good player last season, and I think he'll only get better. That's the thing with this team that I think is really, really interesting to look at, right? They take a look at some of these players, right? They're not very old, right? Sinatra's 18. Architect is 18. The next DPS player we're going to talk about is Rascal. He's 20, right? And he's a DPS player who has a ton of different heroes that he has played. Sombra, Genji, Pharah, McCree, Mei. I think he was the one playing Reaper during a game between Dallas and New York, where they did like a Mei Reaper comp. I don't remember if he was the one playing Mei or Reaper. He might have been playing Mei, but he's also really good. So they have 4 DPS players that are really, really solid. Baby Bay, I don't know, his age is not on his page here, so I don't actually know how old he is. But we're talking about 4 really solid DPS players and a very diverse hero pool, which is super helpful for this team, because that means they can be like, all right, so I want to run this comp, this DPS comp for this match. Well, let's put in, Rascal and Architect for that. And then the next map you're putting in Sinatra and Architect, and then you're putting in Sinatra and Baby Bay, and you're putting in Rascal and Baby Bay, and you can switch out your DPS players a lot for what you need, and that is going to be one of the most useful things for this team, because they benefit from having so many DPS players. And I think it's going to help them out. I mean, we saw that can be really nice. DPS is where you want all that kind of flexibility. You want to be able to have more players, because if you have more DPS players, you can use the hero pool more. You can take more advantage of the amount of damage heroes that there are in Overwatch, right? You have more damage heroes than any other category. I believe there's more than the two, or than tanks and supports combined in the damage category. It's much more. And when you have a diverse group of people, right? That's why having specialists doesn't really hurt that much when you have people with such diverse hero pools, right? So, Baby Bay's a hit scan player, right? So you're not going to see Baby Bay play much outside of McCree, Widowmaker, and maybe Soldier 76, right? And that can be kind of problematic, and that's the kind of stuff you see with another player like Pine, or someone like Carpe, where they can play other stuff, but they're primarily these hit scan specialists. But when you have people like Sinatra, like Architect, and like Rascal, who have such diverse hero pools and can play pretty much anything, it doesn't hurt you if you have Baby Bay in to play whatever you need him to play. So I think this team's DPS core is their best part. They will definitely be in a good position because of that. Sorry, my throat's gone. I don't know why my throat's going so much. But definitely in a good position because of that. And I think when you look at this team and their DPS play, they are in a really good spot. But next we have their tanks. They have 2 tanks on this team, not including their off tanks, just their normal tanks. They have Super, who was their starting tank last season. He's also 18. He's pretty good. He's not the best player on this team by any means, in my opinion, but he's good and he impressed me. He played well. He was one of those players that would come out and would do what he needed to do. He had some very, very, very big moments for this team, and I think that he showed that he was a solid tank player. Pair him with Smurf, who they acquired in a trade with the Houston Outlaws. At least I believe that's where he came from. I believe he was a part of the Dante trade. Yeah. So he was a part of the Houston Outlaws academy team, GG Esports Academy. And he played for Optic Academy before they became GG Esports Academy. But yeah, so Smurf comes to this team as a tank player. I don't know a lot about Smurf. He's a tank player. He's known for playing mostly Winston. I'm sure he is going to be just fine. He's a South Korean player. Once again, we don't know his age. At least it's not on this page. I'm not going to go too in depth looking for the ages, but it's important how young these players are. But Smurf comes in, helps out. I don't believe they had one other tank before this, but they got rid of him. Nomi. He was someone who was cut at the beginning of the season. They didn't cut, or at the end of the season. They didn't cut a ton of players. They just cut some. They cut 4. They traded Dante, so they didn't cut Dante. They traded Dante, and then they cut IDD, QD, Nomi, and Dak. A DPS player, a tank player, and a support player. Who would have guessed? So that's their main tank line. I think their main tank line will be fine. There's really no issues with it. It's a team that I think will be fine in their front line. Their flex tank is Nevix and Choi Hyobin. And I feel like Choi Hyobin was the one playing more so at the end of the season. But when we talk about Nevix, like, his flex play is weird because his signature heroes are Genji, Ana, and D.Va. So he can play pretty much anything, and it's just weird how much he can play. But it's whatever. But Choi Hyobin definitely was playing a lot at the end of the season. He is 21. Or I shouldn't say at the end of the season. Playing late in the season, you had more Choi Hyobin. When I feel like when I watched this team, Choi Hyobin was the one playing. He's that D.Va, he's that Roadhog. So I get the feeling he will probably be the one that plays for the most part. San Francisco Shock head coach, if you're unaware, is Krusty, who used to be the head coach, I believe, of Boston. So, not bad. But definitely this team has a lot of, like, upsides to them. I wonder how well they'll perform, and I'll talk about that when we get to the end of this video more so. But I like their flex tank role. I think Choi Hyobin was pretty good. He's no Meko or Space. Some of those two, like, off tanks that are really good, and there's D.Va players that just that play really well and that kind of can change games and they play consistently and don't have that issue. He's not that level, but he's good and he's good enough. Nevix, I don't know what we'll see him play. Honestly, he could play anything really. They'll play what he needs to play, but I don't know if he'll even be someone who plays all that much. I'm sure he will if they kept him around. If they kept him around, they have some kind of plan for him. But just looking at Choi Hyobin and this team, he works well. This team's interesting because, especially, going into the off season, they had 2 South Korean players. They had Architect and Choi Hyobin, and they signed 3, and got one, signed 2, got one in a trade, which is telling a lot of what this team's doing, right? They added Smurf through the trade, they added Rascal, and they added a support player in Violet with a 2 instead of an E. So I don't know what's going on there, but we'll figure it out. But yeah, Choi Hyobin is probably going to be their main D.Va player, but we could see Nevix in there as well. I've already said that like 15 times. Finally, we have the supports. We have an interesting group here. So first, we're going to talk about Moth, who was their primary Widowmaker player, Mercy player throughout the season. He also likes Lucio a lot, and with the rise of the GOATS composition, wouldn't be surprised if Moth plays a ton of Lucio. I genuinely think it's very possible that he does just play tons and tons of Lucio if the GOATS composition is still around. He did play for the US World Cup team, disappointed everybody, but it's fine. It's fine. He's definitely a good support player. Support is such an interesting role in my opinion. And obviously, like, I play support, so take from this what you will. But when you look at support players, it's kind of interesting because and I've talked about this in the past. Like, the highest of highs for a support isn't going to be as far away from the lowest of lows of supports, in my opinion, as like DPS players. Because DPS players would be super mechanically skilled. What if you're playing like Mercy or Lucio or Moira? It's not so much mechanical skill to do your job as much as it is just making sure you know how to position, making sure you're calling the right shots, making sure you're paying attention. So that's why I think good support play is important, and that there are very clear supports that are better than others and worse than others. But when you look at San Francisco Shock supports, I like Moth. I think he's good. You take a look at Sleepy, who's going to be their Zen player for the most part. At least he was. If he'll stay, I don't know. But he was pretty good. I don't think he's anything incredible. I think he's a pretty good player. I don't think he's a fantastic, like, out of this world player that you look at and you're like, this guy's really, really good and he's better than anybody else. And he's good. But I don't think he's, anywhere close to that Jay Jonak or Badoshan level Zenyatta. And then you have some people who are just like good healing Zenyatas. I don't think he's at that level. And then you have Violet, who is also going to be a Zenyatta player. I don't know which of those two is going to take the precedence. I don't know who's going to play more, who's going to play less. I genuinely have no idea. It'll be interesting to watch, but this support line is pretty good as well. It's solid, but the thing with this team is they don't have many players that I would call superstars, right? They don't have many players, if any players at all, who are the best at their role, right? Now, maybe if you say, well, maybe the best American players in the role, and it's going to be hard to be the best player in your role if you're outside of Korea in a lot of cases, right? You look at the best Widowmaker, you're going to say, most are going to say it's probably Carpe. Some people might say it's Pine. I'd say it's probably Carpe. Someone says who's the best Zenyatta. Someone say Jonak. Who's the best Diva. There's an argument to be had there. Maybe some people might say it's Space. Some people might say it's Fury, I think is the... No. Who's the one that... Is it Fury? Whatever. Not important. Some people might say it's Meko. I mean, there's an argument to be had on kind of both sides. Yeah, it is Fury. There's a kind of an argument to be had on some of these sides, like who's the best player. And I don't really think this San Francisco Shock roster has anybody you can say like they are the best player at their position. Now, maybe you could say that some of these players are the best from their country. In this case, the United States, in the most part. I mean, Nevix comes from Sweden, so maybe you could say he's the best flex DPS player from Sweden, but there's not a lot of Sweden players in the league, so that doesn't really mean anything. Maybe you believe Sinatra is the best American DPS player, which he very well could be. But how does he compare with a lot of these South Korean players, or a player like EQO, who's really, really good? You have to look at this team kind of as a whole. But I think this team works well. I think they played well, they performed well. I think they'll be better this season than they were last season. They're in a division that I think is weak. I don't think any team in that division, with the exception of Seoul, has really improved that much. I think the improvement that Dallas made is pretty equivalent to the improvement that San Francisco made. And I think San Francisco has a higher ceiling, purely because this team has more young talent that can improve and that can perform well and that can grow to be better players than they already are. Whereas I don't think Dallas has that same level of growth that this team does. This team's young. This team has time to develop. Where I think a lot of the teams in this season and in this league, in a way, are kind of like win now teams. And this is a very interesting team to look at because they are right. They want to win now, but they're doing it with young talent. That if they don't win now, they can kind of develop it to become this just really dominant team throughout future seasons, and I think it's a very interesting way to go about doing it. But that's just me. That's the way I think about this team. I think this team is going to be a solid team, but that's just me, obviously. Not every team is going to think that way. Some teams are going to, or some people are going to feel that this team is weak, or some people are going to feel that this team doesn't have the prestige that some other teams do. But I think that they proved late in the season last season that they were improving, and they were improving heavily. And I think that if you look at this team, you will see a very, very, very good roster that will improve heavily between now and the end of Season 2. But that is just my thoughts. Those are just my opinions. Let me know what you think down below, how you feel about this team. I'd love to hear. I'd love to have this discussion about it. But with all that being said, I can't talk. It's been 21 minutes, and I'm just losing it. With all that being said, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, consider liking and subscribing. Helps out the channel a ton. But I'm going to head on out of here. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.